Everyone, hi. Welcome to the special You Are Not Alone episode on Living with Annie 2 channel. Mike Padurano and Andrea Sanchez are here with me. I am sort of a fill-in here at the last minute, but I pulled through just because I would do anything for Michael. So we're here to talk about the fact that now is a very crazy time, yes, but it's also a very lonely time for many of us. And our whole goal is Mike's whole goal, actually, over his 12 days of showing up on lives, is to talk about loneliness, how not to feel lonely, to know that you don't have to feel alone, you're not alone, and everything that comes along with that. So stories of sort of obstacles and overcoming in that regard. So we are here on a special middle of the day, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard, to say hi and talk about not being alone.
Hello.
Yeah, and hi. Hi. So the reason I want to do these things is because it's obviously holiday season, which is horrible for suicide rates. I mean, they go through the roof, and then COVID on top of it, and really being distant from those that you care about and not being able to be in physical presence with people that you want to be around. I think this year is harder than any other year that we've seen in recent times. And the fact that virtual connection can be just as strong and powerful as it can in person, when you allow it to be and believe it can. I think giving people a safe haven, a refuge, a place to go when they don't have a place to go, and just being here for people so that they don't feel alone. Because we're all in this together. I mean, it's such a tumultuous time, and it's just one of those things where everybody is just overwhelmed in every single direction. I mean, there's financial issues, there's family issues, there's health issues. Sometimes we're scared to leave the house, sometimes we're scared to leave our bed, right? Because anytime you put on the news, it's just these drastic, fear-driven messages. And I think we just need to show this presence that we're here for people, and open this door to be here for people. And when I first created this, I didn't have LinkedIn Live, so harder than organizing a typical podcast, which I've done, is organizing 12 hosts, and trying to find times in their schedule during holiday season. And yes, I'm outside because my kids are crazy and loud, so I have to be outside. So you're going to hear trucks passing constantly for this one-way road that goes nowhere. Um, it's it's really ironic, right? Like, we're all in this horrible situation, and we're all just trying to make the best of it. And I think there's ways to overcome and just and fight back and just not give up. For me, I spent my whole life feeling alone, and until I started doing the deep work on myself, and really breaking that down, and finding myself and finding a peace within myself, I wasn't able to not feel alone. I mean, I was in a room full of people and I still felt alone. I was always looking for the next thing to divert my attention or just try and occupy me. And at the end of the day, the simplest solution was to look within. And no matter how many therapists I went to as a kid, which was a lot, and psychologists and neurologists and tons of fun stuff, because I was an empath and always have been, and was told I was crazy. Um, it never made me feel less alone. It made me feel more isolated. It made me feel more away and different and separated from everyone else. And I really just want to be here, as there is a light at the end of the tunnel if you're willing to do the work.
I completely agree with you regarding doing the work, and we've talked about that so much. I actually spent most of my life not alone. And in fact, I was always in a relationship. So I always had a partner or a spouse, and this is the first time in my life that I don't, and present with me. And, when my kids go to their dads, it's a very, very lonely time. And I've had to sort of sit with myself. Hi, Brett. Great to see you on here. Thanks. I've had to really sit with myself, and, I've struggled through that. It's a hard time. And I'm not going to lie and be like, I've done all the work, and now it's easy for me. It's easier than it was a few months ago. That's for sure. I used to wail when my kids left. And now I don't. I used to actually, the truth be told, if I'm being really vulnerable, I used to get the same feeling in my chest and like in my throat that I would get when I was a little girl and I wanted my mom and I was going to my dad's. And it was just like a really, really raw trigger for me. I do not get that anymore. So that's like amazing. And that's just due to dealing with being alone. And that doesn't have to mean that like it's just sitting with myself and just being is it's a hard thing, and reaching out for support when you need it I think is really key, and I'm not great at that, so I'm working on that too.
Yeah, for me, something that you just said, Mike, resonated is you could be in a room full of people and just feel so lonely at the same time. For me, I've always had family around me for the holidays. I've been lucky. I've had a spouse, etc. Everything you can think of, like the typical family gathering. But the holidays are really rough on me because even though I may have people around me, I have social anxiety, number one, and I feel like I'm never good enough or going to live to everyone's expectations. And number two, I feel like not nobody really gets me or knows who I am. They expect for me to be this perfect person of the image that they have in their head, or they thought I was that person, or and I was growing up, if I wasn't mirroring that person in people's minds, then I was shut down or said I needed help, or what's wrong with me, or did you take your medicine today, like for anxiety, or and I eventually had depression. So it's, even though I may be surrounded by people, I feel completely alone. I have felt completely alone. I've gotten better. I've gotten better in that I don't force myself to go around people just because they are labeled as family or they are labeled as people I should be around for the holidays. Even that may sound completely awful. If it's a bad aura or if it's negative, then I'm giving myself the gift to say no and pull back and be happy and hanging out with whoever I want to hang out with, even if it's myself and my dogs and my kids, my immediate family, just reading a book or watching a podcast or whatever it may be. So loneliness has been completely different for me in that respect.
I just want to jump in. I don't know, Mike, if you want to talk, but I have to, first of all, hi, Jenny. Thanks for jumping on. We appreciate you being here. Good afternoon, Lee. How are you? Something that, Andrea, I get it. Something that just really resonated with me that you said was people's expectations of you, and that self-expectation. So people would say, what's wrong with you? Why are you not? And I got the opposite of like, if I'm not, this is my people pleasing where it all comes from, and my approval seeking. If I'm not on, funny, in your face, being the center, spotlighted, if I don't bring that piece of me, I feel less than. And it's because I feel of the expectation of others that I need to be like that, when actually the people closest to me have told me, and I know now I can actually just be me and just be. I don't have to be on every second. And that was an expectation that I put on myself, that, because people do say to somebody like me with my personality, people do say very often, what's the matter? What's wrong? What is something, is something bothering you? You're not yourself. And it's like, no, actually, I am myself right now. I am myself. I'm not bubbly. I'm not, super positive and energetic. I mean, who could have this kind of energy 24 hours a day if you're sober? You can't. So, unless you're, on some sort of speed, you can't do that 24 hours a day. And I'm not. I'm sober. So, if you do say that to people, I would say kind of just maybe check yourself a little bit. I'm sure you don't mean anything by it, but it can be very damaging when people are put in a box of how they're supposed to act. It's very lonely there, and I don't fit in that box. I don't fit.
And it's funny because I did the same thing, except at a very young age, I learned very quickly how to destroy the box that they would put me in. I learned how to lower the level of expectation so low that if I came out of my room, then they were shocked to even see that I was alive. And I really went out of my way to prove that year over year as I got older. I mean, I started drinking at 9, right? So by the time I hit that point, Like it was just this slope down this hill of negativity. And I created so much chaos around me in my life. And every relationship I was ever in, I felt more alone than even when I wasn't in a relationship. Because I just never found anybody who really got me, or I never let anybody really close, right? So it's, the alone feeling was something that just followed me my whole life, no matter what I did. And it carried me through my up until 6 months ago. I mean, until I really was alone. And then magically being alone, I found my way not to be alone anymore. And it's difficult, right? It's challenging because, I self expectations are so much harder than anybody else's, because I really stopped caring about what almost anyone thinks anymore. But the self expectations are crushing. When you start, like, I got mad at myself because the Christmas tree that I ordered December 1st got here today, and it looks like it came in a wrapping paper box. So I'm like expecting, Charlie Brown's Christmas tree to come out of this. And if it does, I might even be surprised, just if it's even looks as good as Charlie Brown's. But I started judging myself again. And at the end of the day, I didn't know what it was going to be when I ordered it on the first. I assumed it was something that I just took care of and it was done, and I could move on to worrying about presents, gifts, everything else that I was doing. And, when I have 3 kids and I'm home by myself, there's no way to go get a real tree and have to worry about setting up a real tree. And I have a car, and it was an hour-long drive to go get a real tree. So it's not like it was very practical, right? So I ordered this Charlie Brown Christmas tree, and I figured it would be at least okay. Maybe I take the picture of it from online, print it out, and put it up in front of it, because maybe that will look better. Maybe it becomes a picture frame for me. But it's okay, because that's my self expectation, right? My kids don't care. They don't care what the tree is like. They're in a safe house that they're not getting, what they went through previously. They're enjoying life. They don't have to worry about what they say to me to even be able to speak to me on a daily basis, right? They're able to sit down and have real conversations at a very deep level, even though they're, 10, 8, and 3. I mean, even my 3-year-old says some crazy off the wall stuff sometimes. And that's from a kid who barely even spoke 9 months ago. It's these little things that I held against myself to such extremes that crushed me to no end. And, doing this work and doing the deep work and going deep within and going through my demons, my real demons, and fighting them off. The drugs and alcohol was never the problem. I always was. That was just something to hide from. It was something just to hide everything from. It just gave a new cop out to the world of why I wasn't going to show up.
Speaking of doing the work, I'm really big on gratitude, and sometimes I miss the mark on it myself, but I do preach it. So I've been really trying to instill that in my life. So just a quick sidebar story. I have a huge TV, and it was put up on the wall by a handyman, and it wasn't put up right, and it fell. Like a really big TV, and a heavy one, because it's a few years old. And it fell, and it cracked. So it's ruined. It's shit out of luck. So am I. But when I called the handyman to fix it, we didn't know it was cracked yet. So he came to fix it, and he put it up, and I was so grateful, but then we realized it was cracked. And long story short, he was almost in tears because he knew that he had to replace it. And I just got really grateful. And I said to him, you know what? You don't need to replace it. I'll find a way to replace it. I don't want you to have to pay for it. I knew that he didn't have the money. And I thought, you know what? I'm so grateful that didn't fall on my dog or my child or me. And at the end of the day, isn't that what matters? And he was in tears, thanking me, because he didn't have the money and he was going to have to work to pay it off. And I just all of it just made me so upset that he was so upset over this. And I knew he didn't mean it. And I just knew if I was in his situation, that I would love for somebody to give me a break. It just seemed like he needed a break. And I'm not saying this at all to toot my own horn. All I'm saying is I just did that because I'm so incredibly grateful. And I didn't want him to feel alone in it, and like it was him against the world. And so that was my story of ultimate gratitude of yesterday, because he was like, thanking me up and down for not making him, or, saying he needed to replace it, because it was really his job to replace. And I have no qualms with saying, you're good. Like, it's okay. Just enjoy your Christmas. How was I going to take hundreds of dollars from him on Christmas when he doesn't have any money? I just couldn't do it. So I felt really grateful that no one got hurt.
Wow. Yeah, that was my main question, is did it fall on you or a kid? Or
It fell on my dresser.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So it cracked like down the middle, which we didn't see, but it's a thing.
It's a thing.
At the end, like, it's a thing. It's just a thing. Nobody got hurt, and somebody could have been badly hurt. It's very heavy.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so, I just like, look, I don't want to go out and buy a new flat screen TV right now, but like, I'm lucky that I have a TV in my bedroom that can fall. So I'll replace it at some point, and I'm just not going to worry about it. So now I have a broken, cracked TV that he rehung for me on my wall, but it's all good. I know that I made a man very happy yesterday, and he was like sick over it. So I know I took that away from him. And that's like, isn't that our whole purpose here? Like, sort of, taking that feeling away from people. And I don't know. I felt like it was a good deed.
Sometimes I really strongly believe, now more than ever, that we get into situations where perhaps it's not ideal at the moment, but it's hidden little gem of lessons or things that we have to be reminded of. And for you, I bet every time you look at your cracked screen, even though you may attribute it to being a negative thing at first, it brings a smile to your face, probably because of the gratitude.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so happy that no one's hurt, and I'm proud of myself. Thank you, Lee. Things can be replaced. People in relationships cannot. 100%. And thank you, Moisha. Hello, how are you guys doing? I'm just like proud of myself, because at that moment I was like, I don't really feel like spending, however many hundreds to replace it, but neither here nor there. I'm taking this off of him. Like, I don't want him walking around on Christmas, which, by the way, I don't even celebrate. So like, I don't want him during his holiday season to be upset. And he was so gracious and thankful. So I just think gratitude is so super important on both sides of that.
Agreed.
Well, I think gratitude is a core foundation, right? Like, gratitude is a core foundation that you taught me at the beginning of my change, and it contributed to my whole mindset being changed, and really started me to want to do the work, right? It started showing me value in my daily life, and where I can go from there. And it really just taught me that pizza's here. Taught me that I there's something to live for every day, right? Like, no matter how bad it gets, no matter how horrible days are, and no matter how low you feel, there is ways to be grateful for things that most others would miss and take for granted, right? And I did it again, by the way. I ordered a 20-ounce soda instead of a 2-liter soda, so I failed that one again. But anyway,
You fail.
that another lesson for me. But that's okay. I have plenty of lessons.
Lessons, drink water.
Yeah, pretty much. I don't drink the soda, so. But yeah, I think being grateful for the little things can take you out of a rut really quick. I think the key is, once you start crawling out of that rut, you need to really do that work. Right? Like, you need to break the situations down and really figure out what your core issues are and where they stem from. And like I talked about it on Russ John's show yesterday about the triggers, right? The triggers are so big for me. And they really controlled my life in so many ways. And I never really understood how much they controlled my life until I started looking at what they were. And how it caused me to deflect things towards other people based on triggers and responses from them. Like, if you really want to go on this journey and you want to be on a happier place and you really want to find yourself, dig down as deep as you can and think down at the worst things in your life and the things that bring you the most pain. Start looking at the Brene Brown books. Start look for trauma therapy. Look for those things so that you can release this, because you don't have to carry it your whole life. You don't need to carry that weight. You don't need to constantly react to triggers, because the triggers is really what creates additional problems as you move forward in life.
What do you say to people that don't really understand how to find what their triggers are? Like, how do you walk me through how you find one?
How do I find one? Okay, so here's the simplest example. When I first got StreamYard or Zoom or whatever it was, or when I was on LinkedIn, I changed my name to Mike Padurano, right? Because the only person in the world that ever called me Michael was my mother, and I have lots of traumatic experience around that. So that was definitely a trigger, and it seems small and it seems very ridiculous. But calling me Michael always triggered those responses and what I went through, right? So it became a situation that it carried through my whole life, and I never really acknowledged it. And it's funny because Annie said, your name should be Michael on LinkedIn, and I'm like, no, I don't go by Michael, right? And I never really looked at why. And then when I really started thinking about it, I broke it down. I mean, you've got to look at your pain points. You want to know what your triggers are, you find your pain points. What little thing in your life annoys the living crap out of you? Like what really gets to you, right? Like, and then if it could be as much as a screeching fan, a fan that just needs to be oiled or something like that, and that sound can trigger something from your childhood that was just a bad experience. It could be dust on a fan because your mother or father would beat the crap out of you if you didn't clean enough when you were a kid. If you wake up and there's a plate in the sink and it freaks you out because when you were a kid it was something you got screamed at for, or if you write your name wrong, or if you don't like your handwriting because in school you were ridiculed for it by your teachers. I think the list could be as small or as big as you want it to be, right? When you go through a major traumatic event, it's easy to say, okay, this is a trigger, right? But
Sometimes it can be a little event too. Sometimes it can be like one split, like little event that you carry with you. I know I have like really strong memories of little things that happened that I've carried.
Yeah.
I think it's the little ones that erode at you more, that really just tear you down from within, because they seem like no big deal, right? You just write it off to being, okay, I'm a little grumpy about this or something, or I'm just not in the mood right now. When really, in reality, it's a trigger that year over year or day after day you're dealing with, and it just tears you down. I mean, triggers are dangerous, and if you don't start addressing them and looking at them and identifying them, then you're going to just keep going in the same cycles of events.
Yeah. For me, Annie, certain scents take me back to a moment in time where perhaps something that wasn't very pleasant came on. And even though my emotions can switch just like that, certain songs, we've all experienced that take us back to a specific time or place, either it's positive or negative. Even to the point of maybe something a certain person is wearing that day. I mean, there's so many triggers and so many different ways. It doesn't have to be just something that you hear or a word. So it's all around us. It's how we experience our memories at that specific time. And I think it's so powerful because I don't realize all the senses are taking in certain components of that memory during that time, which will forever follow you if it's specifically a traumatic memory. So when I catch myself doing that, what I find now, I mean, it's incredibly hard, especially, I was brought up constantly criticized. And so I find that now I realize that when people seem to start getting mad at me or not agreeing with me, I automatically, that's a trigger for me. Like, I need to make sure that
they're okay.
They're okay, and don't get mad at me. If not, I feel like my worth goes down. So, but I'm starting to realize that's why I've been acting that way in the past. Now what I do, what I love to do, is when I start feeling those moments, I go to a place of gratitude like you and find a way to give back. So that energy is kind of packaged in another way. It's a wimpy way of taking away from me, but when I find that if I focus on something else or making someone else uplift someone else, then it makes me feel better.
Hi, Gabe. How
Hey,
are you?
Yeah, Gabe.
Jenny said, I'm grateful Howard introduced me to you. You're such a doll. Thanks everybody for popping on and listening. I hope that it's impactful today. Just, you know, Andrea, I don't find anything about what you just said wimpy. I find that I'm trying to figure out how to do that in my life. So I'm trying to apply what you're saying. It's such good direction as far as, because I'm very anti-conflict. It makes me very uncomfortable. But I come off, I think, differently though. Like I'll say anything to anybody. I'll have a difficult conversation, but it's very uncomfortable for me. So I think that's a really important thing that you just said, to re-gift it, repackage it.
yeah, it helps.
Well, I think a lot of this is repackaging, right? I mean, even triggers and even dealing with triggers and even dealing with blame, shames, and guilts, and dealing with all of this. There's so much to be said for repackaging and how you, because it's all about showing it to yourself in a different way, right? And expressing it in a different way, so that you can handle it, right? Because I don't know if we can ever fully get rid of things that have happened in our past or fully erase them from our
You're right.
past.
It's totally repurposing it,
It
like
it
reframing.
is. It is. It's all about that reframing and it's sorry. Like my phone just keeps going off as I'm sitting here and it's covering the whole screen and I'm like, I don't know what's going on.
You can turn, there's a way. I mean, I know you go with Android, which is whatever, but like you can turn off notifications. I mean,
Android.
I think Androids can do that. I don't know about you Android people, but I think you can just
Uh,
just saying.
okay. Well, the bad cameras make my face look rounder, so I'm okay with that. It makes it more. The bad camera quality makes my face rounder and a little bit more orange, so it's okay. Um, Look, at the end of the day, it's all about reframing everything, right? I mean, this whole thing, our perception of what's going on is what crushes us,
Yep.
right? Because our perception can control so many pieces of things that that's how we see things based on our experiences, based on our perception, based on what's going on. We see it through a lens that our lens has created based on our past events and current events and future events. And that lens gets dangerous because if we don't have a way to be objective about where we're at, where we want to be, and how we want to get there, we get stuck in this tunnel vision that, where we're at is the only way. Right. So we've got to separate ourselves from our perception quite a bit, pull ourselves back a little bit. The only thing that I could relate it to is if you only watch one news channel and you're not watching both, then you're only getting one side of the story. Right.
That
If you're
from
only,
that lens.
yeah, I mean, because again, as humans, we have the ability to do almost anything we want, right? We can go spiritual, we can do any of these things and, see auras, have energy, play with energy, manifest, do all these different things in our worlds. But why can't we step outside of our humanness at times and see a bigger picture? And when you're at that lonely place or feeling alone, I think it's so impactful to take a step back and understand where you're at today. Understand what's going on around you and where everyone around you's at, right? Like I could be mad that I'm 1,200 miles away, 1,500 miles away from anybody that I care about, right? Like I have, I'm used to having big holiday get-togethers, having bunch of people around. And then I really look at it, and even as early as last year's holidays, I was in a room full of people and family and friends that I still felt alone. You know, I'm grateful today because, yeah, I mean, I have my kids. That's amazing. And I'm not even going there, but I'm alone and I don't feel it today. I just don't, right? People that I care about that are 1,200, 1,500 miles away, wherever they are, um, I feel like they're with me. And that's because I have a better sense of me. And I've done that work and I feel where I'm at and I know where I want to be and where I want to go and how I want to get there. And it's really all to the work because I think without the work I'd never see any of this at all. I'd still
Um,
be in that lens.
To your point, James, this is what we were talking about before. James Jackson says, childhood or past repeated trauma built on the failings of others, positioned as false faults of your own, can become a conditioned reality, impacting your personal psychological safety in adult life. Absolutely.
100%.
It's a great way to put it. Gabe says, so what do you suggest to someone who's uncomfortable being alone, especially during the holidays?
Sleep it out. No. Find something that wakes you up, that brings energy to you, that makes you feel alive. Find a charity that you can give to. Find something that you can participate in virtually. Find a book that empowers you, or just self-analyze a little bit. And yes, I'm the biggest overthinker on the planet, but there is a time and a place for it, and there is a time and a place to break yourself down a little bit and really start doing, a tree or some type of timeline in your life of when you started feeling alone and why, right? And start breaking down those situations and circumstances, and then find gratitude for where you're at today versus where you were then. It's not always about being in a perfect scenario, because I'm being far from perfect, and my scenario is far from perfect, but I'm finding the bright spots in it every single moment of every day, right? Like, I'm just looking for it, and that's the difference. My perception has been changed to look for the positives.
And don't be scared to reach out to people. Like I go so inward when I'm feeling like that, and the healthy thing to do is to reach out for support, near or far. We're all virtual right now anyway, for the most part. Reach out to anybody that you feel a connection with. That's why I love our community on LinkedIn so much, because I've developed friendships. And so watching terrible Philadelphia Eagles football, a great distraction. No, watching the Dallas Cowboys is great. So, it was actually an amazing, amazing football game the other night. So yes, I might have shed a tear at the end. Okay. So that's where my heart is. We all know it. I forget what I was saying, but reaching out. I mean, we've created relationships and friendships that are closer than I've ever had in my life with some people in this community. So, reach out. If anybody, people have reached out to me several times and said, I'm alone. I'm going through this. I just want to tell you, can you just listen? And I was there, and I would always be there. So, don't be scared to reach out. Don't feel like, this is one feeling I've had before. Don't feel like everybody else has it together and you don't. Exactly. Like, why would I put that burden on somebody else? They have it all together. Trust me, they're probably feeling the same way. Many people are.
That's the one for me that I feel like a burden, right? I don't want to burden anybody else with me, right?
It actually is the opposite of a burden when you ask for help.
It is. And that's the toughest thing to do, is to reach out, right? The reaching out part is so difficult, but it could be as simple as just even saying hi, right? And opening the door to a conversation. And it doesn't have to be, oh, these are my thousands of problems. It could be, hi, how are you? And what's going on? And, if it comes up in conversation, it does. But even just making that connection for that moment in time can alleviate some of those pressures, stresses, and expectations that you're putting upon yourself, right? And I think that's where it starts. I think, it's about finding that connection that you can have with yourself, one, and then with others also. You've got to find it with yourself first. No. I think that's a big part of it.
I agree. Mike, just for an example, when you posted on LinkedIn this morning about it's not like you, but you're asking for help on getting on LinkedIn Live and someone to appear today on your show, and it gave me such great pleasure, and I felt like this energy in me to be able to want to help you. So asking for help, you don't realize that some other person is that exactly what they needed that day to start their day, or to make them be uplifted, because that's what I'm all about. I love to help others, and again, that's how I used to redirect my energy when I'm feeling triggered. So you have no idea how much that helped me when you asked for help. And so I need to remember the words I say to myself, because
story of my life.
I don't know where these come from. Story of my life. Because I'm horrible about asking for help, but yeah, that really brightened my day today. And also, I guess the other thing is we're surrounded by what society expects us to look like or how to act during the holidays. And who are they to tell us how to act during the holidays? And why are these specific days considered holidays? Every day, for what we know, could be considered holidays or could not be considered holidays. So just treat it as any other day. Now, whether like you're feeling down because you're going to be alone for Christmas or alone for New Year's, well, um, redefine what alone means. I mean, why does alone have to be such negative connotation? Sometimes alone is a way to recharge. It's a way to find out what makes you get energized. And like for me, it's giving back to others, and find that time when you feel alone or triggered to go and do what you feel is energizes you. So it's about, again, repackaging all of that and thinking out of the box and not getting so tied up with the commercials and what the holidays should be, what they should look like, who should be around you. Because as you said, Mike, you could be still alone and incredibly lonely even if you have tons of people around you. So don't assume that just because you may not have anyone around you that someone else in a crowded family atmosphere isn't feeling the exact same way as you.
I think so. Okay, so here's a way that we're going to repackage, right? So this is where I think we start repackaging with this conversation. If we all agree that we're all helpers and we love helping everybody else and we're all horrible at asking for help, and let's repackage that and say that we're giving somebody else the opportunity to help us, right? Because we love helping others. One, maybe because for me, it's a way to avoid myself in some ways. But I mean, at least it used to be. Now it's not as much anymore. But I think when we look at it, it's if we repackage this and we say by asking for help, we're giving others the opportunity to be able to be the helper, then it's a whole different perspective. And I think it takes that negative connotation away from asking for help, because asking for anything always felt so negative, right? You know, growing up, and it was, you know, don't ask anybody for anything, keep everything a secret, everything's private. You know, we need to show the world that we're this big happy family, you know, no matter what it was inside, right? No matter what pan was getting thrown at me, if the knives one day, you know, silverware one day, screwdrivers another day, you know, I mean, there was tons of crazy stuff going on, but on the outward world, we had to present this perfect image. And it put me into this false belief that I always had to wear a mask and I always had to pretend to be something I wasn't. And I think it's time to reframe that, right? Because social media has put us into a world where everyone's on display. And if we're always putting up a mask on social media, considering that we pretty much live on it 24/7, then we're never going to be able to be ourselves. And we're not even going to know what that is after a while. And if we start looking at things that we're giving somebody else the opportunity to be the helper, then maybe it's easier for us to ask for help. I mean, I know, excuse me, I know that there's been times that I've flipped it in my head, and that's the only way I was able to do it, because I was horrible at asking for help too. I just never wanted to. I felt like a burden. I always felt like a burden, every aspect of my life.
I have a little bit of a different, like I have extreme anxiety around holidays, extreme anxiety, because my family growing up, they fought over who was going to get me, my mom's side or my dad's side. So, I mean, when I tell you it was torture, it was torture. So I'll leave it at that. And it went through my young adulthood, and my need to please was so apparent. So there's a little piece of this, a little tiny shred of this where we can't do stuff all together that gives me relief. In a strange way, I have relief around where I'm going to spend my time. I don't have to divide anymore. I don't have to make that choice. And it was always put on me to do that. And then I was expected to, you know, clean up and it's over. When there was like a big blowout fight or torturous physical and emotional situations every year around Jewish holidays, around Hanukkah, around every holiday. So, I talk about a trigger. I mean, there's a certain aspect where I really like that I don't have to pick that. So that's like a real trigger for me. Even though I did reframe it in a way, and I sort of started to think to myself, you know what? I almost wish I had a little bit of that anxiety because I'd really like to be with my family this year. So it's like push pull with me, back and forth a little bit. If that makes any sense.
I think there's a lot of push and pull with everyone, right? I mean, I think we inadvertently do that quite often, right? Because we're so, as I'm going through this process, I know that I'm unsure about certain things and ways that I do things now because it's uncomfortable for me. It's not the way that I acted for the first 41 years of my life. And now that I'm 42, 41 and a half, it's not like the last 6 months. It's like I'm a different person and I'm just so uncomfortable in where I'm at. So many things just don't feel natural to me because I'm not the same person I was my whole life. And, it puts this push and pull sometimes to where, wow, I really wish I was, in Florida right now. But then I look at it and I say,
no, I
I'm not the
don't.
same, right. I'm not the same person. So if I go back there, it's not going to be right. It's just not, because I'm not going to fit into the expectations that were created there for me. And it's not about anybody else. It's based on how I acted for the first 41 years of my life. I mean, I don't blame them. I mean, I did a real good job of conditioning people. It's like, I proved to be that person. Oh, here comes the Mack truck. Here we go. Okay, perfect. Mid-sentence. But, oh, here comes another. I'm going on mute now.
I hope trucks are not a trigger for him.
No.
I can relate to that. Sometimes when you're finding yourself, like I think we've all been through this awakening, or are starting to awaken, not knowing who you are, and you thought you were all this stuff for so many years. You feel completely alone because it's like, okay, now what? Who am I? So you try to discover yourself, plus also try to fit in and fit with others' expectations and make sure people like you when you don't even know who you are. So it's a lot at once.
It's very challenging, right? Because, growing up, my family always having, there's more trucks coming. Seriously, I can't even make this up. Like, this is a one-way road that goes nowhere. Where these trucks are going, I have no idea. Like, it doesn't even make sense. Maybe they're one brick at a time building this road another 10 feet. Like, when I was growing up, we were such a, everybody got together at the house. Everybody, we were the house that everybody came to have these huge gatherings. And there were so many people. Now, granted, it was easy to figure out where I found the liquor to start drinking at 9. But at the same time,
at 9 a.m. and 9 years old.
Yes, pretty much.
Wow.
But it's easy to understand where the expectation is to be something I wasn't came from. Right? Because remember, we're always putting up this front to being this picture perfect family. There wasn't social media back then that, you could get a snapshot of, whatever, some craziness happening in your house. We didn't have smartphones. We didn't have, thank God, actually, because that would have been bad. I'd probably be in jail. But still, besides the point, it's like looking back, like we had this front and we put up this facade and we always had to be on our game and we always had to pretend to be all together. And I don't wonder why 41 years later I'm finally doing the work. I don't wonder why I was broken for so many years. It wasn't being true to myself, right? And like Andrea said, we're going through this transformation process and awakening and spiritual awakening and people opening their eyes to different sides of themselves. And I think looking back, it's now you're really starting to see your garbage, right? And if you don't know how to do the work, or if you're not looking to do the work, or if you're not reaching out to do work, or you're not looking to really change, then you're doing yourself a tremendous disservice, because you're going to have the same results if you keep making the same mistakes, and those that are going to change are going to disappear on you, because they're not going to fit in your life anymore. And it's sad because
This is such an amazing conversation. You've all been talking about everything I've been feeling. It's another confirmation God is always listening and you're never alone. Thank you, Mary Ellen. She's such a light.
yes,
Beautiful.
yeah, it's a lot. I mean, with COVID and the crazy year that we've had and everything that we go through and everything that we put ourselves through, and we always act the worst to the people closest to us, and I don't think that it's intentional. I think it's because we have that bond and we expect that it can't be broken. And this time of year more than ever, in this current environment more than ever, I think we need to be more empathetic to those closest to us, because we really don't know what they're going through at all times either, because we all are very stuck in our own crap. Right?
And not everybody's in touch with what they're going through.
That's
right. And that's part of it too, right? Sometimes you just don't know what you're going through and you're just off. And it's difficult. It really is difficult. And you have the weather change, you have the season change, not everybody has sad lamps. So, I think people just need to build their whole house with sad lamps, especially for this year. Like, they should have had a huge spike in sales. But it's like we just don't know. We've got to separate ourselves from any preconceived notions of what we expected people to be like at this time of year right now. And then we also have to forgive ourselves, because we're not going to be what we thought we were either. I promise you.
That self-forgiveness is a huge piece.
Yeah.
Piece of everything we're talking about. Every single part of it.
100%, because a year ago, this time of year, there is not a single person that probably saw this coming. I didn't expect to be in Arkansas, that's for sure. I mean, I didn't expect to be here for 9.5 months now. I didn't, expect my timeline to be almost a year by the time this is, some type of conclusion. It's crazy. Like, none of these things, and we're in this fast-paced world where it's easy to miss those details. It's easy to move on to the next problem, rather than being grateful for still being able to have problems. Like, you need to find the gratitude in the little things, because that's how we get through. Thank you.
I agree. It is easy to take those closest to us for granted. It's an extra special time to not. And I think this is a really pertinent question, really important. Does picking a favorite color M&M give you anxiety? I don't know who the question is directed to, but obviously my favorite one is green. Obviously. It's like, I don't even understand the question.
I don't remember putting a bag of M&Ms in the freezer and then eating them a couple hours later and not just eating the whole bag. So, I mean, it's not like ever. I don't know about picking colors. I mean, I don't know what that is, but that never happened.
No,
not with me.
You just eat them.
Yeah, I mean,
It's when the inside that matters.
And also, they don't melt in your mouth and not in your hand. FYI, they do melt.
They melt in your hand, so yes.
They're lying. Just another way that we're lied to, everyone.
Manipulated by M&Ms.
Manipulated.
By M&Ms, thank you.
By M&Ms.
Oh, M&Ms. But what you were saying about COVID, it's so funny or magical. I don't know what the word is, but this time where the world seems to be shut off, or that's the preconceived notion or the assumption everyone has, because that's what the media says, that it's such a dark period. I wouldn't have met you guys. I wouldn't be here right now if it wasn't for this 2020 happening the way it should be. So in a weird way, 2020 has actually opened up more people to me, even though it was specifically deemed a lonely year. So it's what you make out of it as well. You need to put forth the effort rather than sit in a corner and say, I'm so lonely, COVID is happening, I can't get out, what am I going to do? And that takes a lot of effort as well. So it's a lot of it is what you choose to do.
Your perspective. That's what my video was about this morning, about my mentor saying to me, you need to be really proud of yourself. I'm like, why? Like, this is, and she's like, you've created this community for yourself. And I feel like when I go on LinkedIn and I'm active and engaging, we have such a strong community of people that we've had talks with and people that we've engaged with, and like just friendships and bonds that have formed, and then really close friendships and bonds, that I sometimes feel like it's me going to the office. Like, it kind of replaces that for me. So if I go a day or two without it, I almost have like a little bit of LinkedIn withdrawal. Like, I'm not into community. So I really have to tell myself to disconnect. But that aside, I think we need to be really, really proud of ourselves for maintaining this and growing it during this time. I think, to your point, Andrea, growing these friendships and relationships during a time when we could have thrown our hands up and said, we're screwed. We're alone. We're not going to meet these people, And so it is perspective. Sorry, Michael, I think I cut you off.
No, I agree, right? Like, I mean, I've said this many times that 2020 is my best year of my life, and I mean it. With all the chaos and all the craziness and all the negativity that's happened around the world, it's by far the best year of my life personally. I've made enormous evolutionary steps for myself. And despite my circumstances, situation, everything that I've gone through, I've forced myself and made myself and took action to be my best self every day, and to continue to evolve that forward, because I didn't want to be stuck anymore, no matter what the circumstance or situation was.
So, how do people follow you and find you on your 12 days of Christmas that you're doing? /12 days of LinkedIn.
Tomorrow's with Charisse Fontes at 11 a.m. Central, and then Hallie Avalio on Thursday at 12 p.m. Central, and then you again, Annie again on
me again.
You again. People
I'm
can't
back
get enough
again.
of Annie. People can't get enough of Annie.
Oh yeah, definitely. Gabe said this is a really great conversation, but that's only after he asked you what your favorite brand of liquor was at 9. So
anything I could replace with water.
Right.
I didn't figure out that flat soda looked like, dark liquors yet.
Thank you, Mary Ellen. I'm glad that it resonated with you.
Yeah, but so I mean the rest of the week is, let's see, we have Charisse tomorrow at 11 a.m. Central, Hallie at 12 p.m. Central. On Thursday, Annie, I think we're 11 a.m. on Friday. Is that what we are? Central?
I just know where you told me to go. I don't know.
And then Seima, I have Seima on Saturday at 12 p.m. Central, and then Daryl, the bow tie guy, on Sunday.
I think that's an important comment to read.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's a beautiful thing.
That's awesome.
You are more than welcome.
That was really sweet to say that. He's a favorite of many. The go-to.
I don't know about that, but I'm a work in progress.
We all are.
That's all we can do.
Yeah. I'm glad to the people. I'm so grateful and thankful for the people that jumped on today, and anybody that watches the replay, if they're feeling like they want to hear people talking about their experiences and overcoming loneliness, and this is where it's at. Mike's 12 days of Christmas.
Right.
I just don't want anybody to be alone. I mean, even if they don't comment, even if they don't post about it, even if they don't talk about it, at least just listen, because you're not alone. You're just never alone. There are people by your side. There are people that care. There are people that want to be there for you. You just have to allow it, and you have to accept yourself and have some self-compassion. I mean, so much of this is about self-compassion. So difficult.
Self-compassion is really hard. It's like it's tied for me with self-forgiveness. Those two things they battle for the number one slot of the hardest thing for Annie to do. Yet I preach it because it works. It works. And if you do the work, you'll understand, and you'll work through it, and you will be able to forgive yourself, and you will be able to have compassion for yourself. But it's very, very hard. And it takes a lot of, it's worth it, but it takes a lot of introspection. That's for sure.
Yes, 100%.
James said, thank you. Best wishes. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas, James.
Thanks,
Thanks for
James.
coming on. Appreciate you. Hi, Howard. Good to see you. Happy holidays.
People are
Probably like work
wondering
at
what.
Macy's. Happy holidays, everyone.
She's like the
Customer
door
service is
greeter.
down the hall.
The door greeter.
Yeah, I'm the computer. So
Start handing out face masks as they walk in.
I know, it's seriously.
It's
That's what I have to say today. So I'm glad that people joined us, and hopefully some of it resonated.
No, I appreciate it, and thank you as always, Annie, for stepping up to the plate and agreeing to jump on. And here comes another Mack truck. Here they come again.
Absolutely, I would always laugh at. I will always step up to the plate for you and for our people. Andrea, thanks for being here. Appreciate you always and seeing your smiling face. I just always want to just give you a hug.
Oh,
You're very huggable.
I'll take it. I want to give you a hug too.
You're very huggable.
Yeah, I didn't know what to expect today, but like you, anything that Mike is doing, anything you're doing, I'm there. So I love it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I appreciate both of you tremendously. And I just want to make sure that our point is getting out there and that people are listening and know that, there's other ways to not feel alone.
And shameless plug, I have a great show tonight at 8:00. If you want to come back.
Do you?
Yeah.
Who's on it tonight?
Tell me who's on it.
I don't remember.
Is it you?
Yeah, I have an ex-NFL football player, keynote speaker, inspirer, motivator. So come at 8:00. You'll see.
Yeah.
Living with Annie channel. Like and subscribe. Yeah. This is what I never do. I never ask people to like and subscribe. Never. Ever. It's like I'm anti. Never. So I'm finally saying it. This is me coming out of my comfort zone.
Proud of you.
Yeah.
Like and subscribe.
All right, guys. Have a good one.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Bye.